Receiving incoming transmission.
Incoming transmission.
Incoming transmission.
I'm sure you have many questions.
Transmission.
Transmission.
Hello, everybody, to show number 2, part 2. Each week, Sashko from MDG and myself, Ben from OK Grow, we go to the Meteor forums and we ask you guys what is the most important things that you want to hear from us. We have some awesome sponsors. MDG is the best sponsor. They're sponsoring Sashko's time. And OK Grow, who I work for, is an awesome sponsor. They're dedicating my time towards this as well as sponsoring the podcast. Full disclosure, and then we're going to get into the topics. Sashko and I are individuals. We have our own individual view on things, but by no means does that mean that it's something official from MDG or something official from OK Grow.
Transmission.
If you guys were with us on part 1, we talked about reactive GraphQL. It was an amazing conversation, and we kept it under 30 minutes. Our goal was 20 minutes, so you guys got to love us like we did it. We did it. So
almost.
I know. I reset my timer. Let's see how well we could do on this one. So show number 2, part 2, we're going to be talking about a forum post that Mitar posted saying how open source Meteor really is if pull requests are not getting in. And this is an older forum post, but it's very relevant still. And Sashko picked this one to talk about. And so congrats to you, man. And before we dive into this, though, I want to remind everyone that Sashko's amazing.
Oh, wow. Thanks.
And the reason why I want to do that is to point that out is like Sashko picked this topic. This is something that like everyone thought like MDG would shy away from or something like that. And like he picked this one. And this just goes to show that like how committed MDG is to like doing this right and like having it be community driven. And so big hats off to you. And I also want to like kind of put in a little like pat on the back. Everyone said that our show transmission is like really accomplishing that extra touch for like reaching out to the community and all stuff. And so that's pretty stoked.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. This is like a really great time, and definitely, you ask some of the hard hitting questions. And that's super important, I think, just to keep everyone honest,
Yeah. Our goal was, do you want to tell everyone what our viewership goal was for like the first 8 shows? You're going to try and reach a number.
Yeah, I think you were talking about having like 1,000 views or listens, right? Yeah.
For one show, we were going to try and to accomplish 1,000. And today it marks 1 week from show number 1, which was a 50-minute show, which was brutal.
My God.
And we have over 3,000 views on that already. So like, guys, this is amazing. And so thank you very much. We're both like super excited to be part of this. And thank you for listening to it. Now, let's dive into the juice, man.
All right.
So Mitar brought this up, and then about a week later or so, Josh Owens wrote a blog post on Medium that had some interesting stats about open source projects. And he cited React, he cited Angular, he cited Ruby on Rails. And basically what it was doing was comparing the number of PRs to the number of contributors and figuring out the percentage of where code's coming from. And so like per contributor, what's the average percentage? And it was right around like 20% was the average. And
20% of what?
So when you take the contributor and how much code that let me pull this up because I'm murdering it right now. Ben, don't be nervous talking about this. Don't be nervous, Ben, don't be nervous. Okay, I'm pulling it up right now. All right, so it's commits per contributor, and it's an average number. So like, for example, Rails has almost 56,000 commits, and it has almost 3,000 contributors doing that. So it averages out to about 19 commits per contributor.
Mm-hmm.
Node.js is around 16 commits per contributor. React is 10 commits. Angular's 5 commits per contributor. And so that's like the diversity of how many people are contributing to these. and the acceptance of PRs. And then you go to Meteor and it's 60 commits per contributor, which means that there's a smaller group of people that are actually getting in. And so that was that was just, kind of eye-opening. And then going back to the Mitar topic. So right away you jumped on this and you were like one of the first responses to this topic, and definitely thought that your response was like right on. So just to do an overview, there was 3 points that you made on your response, and I want to just list them, and then I want to open it up to you and like kind of get your input on each one. So the first one was, you're saying this is an issue. We want to change it. Here are the 3 issues that are contributing to it that you felt was contributing to this. One was there wasn't enough bandwidth on your side, on the MDG side, to accept the PRs and go through it and test it, review it, and all that stuff. Number 2 was too much code in one place. And that kind of also attributes to number 1, where like you need more bandwidth to kind of go through and trudge through all these PRs when you got like this huge code base. And number 3 is team structure. So like you guys are very much a scrappy startup, where a lot of people are all over the place. And that kind of helps with the startup, but it also might deter from efficiency and all stuff. At least that's how I read into it. I want to get your input on that. So like, let's hit like number 1, not enough bandwidth.
Yeah. So I think, just to go a little bit more in depth on that, I've thought about this a lot since then. I actually wrote a giant response and then like it didn't post it, because that's like the thing that people do, right? You like type a lot of stuff and you're like, oh, actually it's not a good idea to write all this. But
I'm super emotional, man. I do that all the time. I'm like,
yeah. But going into that is basically, so it seems like Meteor has been around for a long time, around maybe 3 years of serious development. But I think almost all of that has been essentially building an MVP and building a validation of the idea that a full stack JavaScript framework is possible at all in today's world, and B, like something that people would want. And
it's a very ambitious project. Like it's not small. It's very much an all-encompassing project.
Right, because when you say that what you want is one unified JavaScript platform, your minimum viable JavaScript platform becomes very large, because even something like Rails has a lot fewer jobs to do than Meteor does, right? Rails doesn't build your app into a mobile app. Rails doesn't help you write your client-side UI, right? Rails doesn't help you do animations or anything like that. And so I think to get something that even worked, that you could build a complete full stack production app on top of, it took a lot of very focused effort of like very heads down development, saying like, we got to build feature A, we got to build feature B, we got to make sure that everything works. And that came at the expense of a lot of other things, right? It came at the expense of supporting another data source like SQL, right? Being able to focus on something like Mongo and hardwiring that everywhere throughout the stack let us develop that much faster by not worrying about decoupling that stuff as hard. But I think that these things, obviously have had great costs in other dimensions of Meteor's success, right? For example, we didn't have enough time to make each individual part of Meteor stand on its own as much as we would have liked to, which would have gotten us more adoption from the wider community. Another thing that suffered a lot is, community involvement, because it takes a lot of real concentrated effort to make sure that people can contribute in a meaningful way to this project, right? It's the same thing like, imagine if you were working on a project, there were a lot of people who were interested in helping you, but you didn't have as much time to figure out where people could help, setting up the appropriate structure, like making it so that accepting pull requests was a priority, because it was always kind of about building the next feature that will make, this is the feature that will make Meteor viable for production applications. And so I think like now we're at the place where I believe that we've validated that having a full stack platform like this is definitely valuable, and a lot of people get a lot of productivity benefits from it. And we think we've also validated that it's possible, even though we ended up in kind of an alternate universe of JavaScript because we were so heads down. I think that, it's kind of telling that I don't think anybody else is currently in that full stack JavaScript sweet spot that we are, right?
Yeah.
There isn't even a build system right now that can build you client and server side code at once, right? Like, we're going to go into Webpack later, but I've seen some very sketchy experiments trying to get Webpack to build your server side code, and it doesn't really work. And so now you have to have one build chain set up for your server code and one for your client code. And that's one thing that Meteor's really nailed. Like, your server side code and client code, you write them exactly the same way.
Yeah.
So anyway, while we were doing that, I think we didn't have enough time to invest as much as we should have in that community involvement. I think there's an argument can certainly be made that we would have gone faster had we taken the time to invest in that earlier. And I very much believe that if we invest in it now, that will speed up Meteor development significantly and make it better for everyone, because obviously when there's more people working on something, more stuff will get done.
Yeah.
And I think it's,
hindsight's always 20/20 though.
That's right. Yeah. So it's hard to say actually what would have even happened. But I don't want to say it's like a justification. But but let me talk about some of the things that I think will significantly improve that in the future. And I know that people have had some serious conversations about that, like very recently. It's something that the company are very passionate about and want to improve. So I think like the number one thing that will help is just involving more people. And I think that necessitates splitting up the code a little bit, right? So if we have, to take an example, if we have, for example, Blaze was in a separate repository, and we could get some people in the community to be more deeply involved in maintaining Blaze itself, it would be a lot easier to get that stuff in. Because if there's a pull request against that repository, you know that the only thing you have to test is if Blaze works.
Right. Like you don't have this big like castle of cards,
Exactly. Yeah. And we can make sure that that particular part of the code is well tested. And we can have that repository be the center of where people report issues about it, where people go if they want to use it standalone without Meteor, which I think is also super important. So I think like that's going to be the number one best thing. And that's what we're doing with the data project as well, is we're going to do it in a totally separate repository, right? Which will have its own tests, its own API. It's not going to be like super hardwired to the rest of the system in ways that are hard to detect. Because right now, like if I see a pull request against like DDP or like Meteor's data thing today, it's really hard to know what that's going to affect.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And so then that whole issue, that issue right there kind of contaminates everything, where it makes it very hard to like start bringing in pull requests, because it's almost like a point where it's everyone's had those projects where there's lots of spaghetti code. There's lots of individual knowledge on the team, and you need to go talk to someone who like implemented a certain feature before you like modify it or implement another one. And in an open source world, you can't just like go over to where the other person's sitting and like really hash something out.
That's right. In today's world, like in order to like reasonably submit a good pull request that changes a lot about Meteor's like inner workings, you would basically have to go talk to David Glasser about it. And like that's sometimes what we have to do internally as well. If we want to make some big changes, there's some parts that even we don't understand internally. And I think that's the biggest thing that would need to change if we want to be really efficient about accepting PRs. And of course, like one thing we can do very soon, which we're talking about and hoping to do, is just place more emphasis on that. Even if it's not efficient, I think that's still not an excuse for not doing it. So, while we're on the path to making it more efficient for people to contribute, we should also take the time to go and look at some of the most important contributions and make sure those are getting in.
That's big. That's big. Because like the criticism to us, like talking right now, some people will say, well, some of the PRs aren't that big, and right now we're talking about big ones, and even the small ones are having a hard time, getting eyes on them.
Yeah.
And that's like kind of like what you're speaking to right now, where you're saying like we're looking to improve that.
Yeah. So we recently had kind of like a work retreat thing where we had some in-depth conversations about stuff. And there are a couple of people who have like action items to follow up and have more meetings and figure out a system that will work for us to get better at accepting these pull requests. Because there's undoubtedly a lot of extremely valuable stuff that is just not getting looked at because there's not a good system for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think like it's also, that's huge because honestly, there's also like a culture that's formed around it. And we touched a little bit on this last week when I said, hey, authors need to watch out, like if they do like little jabs or negative headers or anything, because then there's like a little bit of a culture that's formed around it, even if the rest of the body of the text is like really positive.
Mm-hmm.
I think also the same thing goes for this, where there's a culture formed around the idea of MDG just doesn't accept PRs. And so I think there's even like a huge amount of PRs that just never even become PRs because
that's
of
right.
Culture of thinking that. So the first step is to recognize it. And I think like hands down, that's what you're doing. The second step is to like start like chipping away at what's there. And so that's huge right there. Like you can't fault anyone for like then talking about it and putting that out there.
Yeah. I think one thing that would also be really helpful, and this is something that I also want to like challenge the community to do a little bit, is one thing that we don't have, but we should have, is a good resource for how to make a good contribution.
Mm-hmm.
And that means like, step one, make sure your contribution is something that a lot of people need, right? Step one is make sure that there's a discussion that says a lot of people need this feature and it's not just my app. Step two is make sure it's something that is good, right? It has a good code style. It's well tested. It's well documented. There's a good description about why it's needed, because there's a lot of pull requests that are like, my code wasn't working. I changed this one line in Meteor and now my code works. Like, please accept.
Yes.
And if it, like when I write code for Meteor at my job, nobody will let me merge it unless it's well tested and it has good style and it meets all the things. It's not like I just willy-nilly just like commit whatever I want all the time.
Yeah.
So I think like I want to challenge people when they submit a pull request to make sure that it's well documented why that feature is needed and that it's definitely well tested and that it follows the direction of what we need in the future.
Is there, now I would almost say like that is releasing like guidelines like that. That's almost like what's really expected from a facilitator of an open source project is publishing those guidelines and then also holding people accountable to those guidelines. So when they do submit a PR, be like, hey, where's the test for this? Or, hey, I can't look at this unless you cite an issue where other people are having this problem.
Yeah. And I think the problem is it's very hard to say those things if you don't have the rules about it. Right.
Right. Yeah. So is this something that like we can maybe say like we'll see in the Meteor guides, like how to contribute?
It's interesting. So the first thing I want to do, and there was a kind of an issue by Josh Owens about this that I think was a great start, was I want to move the contributing guidelines out of the GitHub wiki. Can I just say for a moment, the GitHub wiki is like the worst thing ever created by anybody. Sorry. Like it's on GitHub, but you can't file a pull request on it. Right? Yeah. So we have this contributing guide in our wiki and nobody can contribute because our only options are let anybody change it, which we don't have the time to like moderate that, right? Somebody could like add like offensive language to our contributing guidelines. Mm-hmm. But you also can't PR it. So I think step one, which I want to do like as soon as I have time, is move all the contributing information into the repository itself so that people can submit pull requests. And accepting pull requests to documentation is something that I do a lot. If you can figure out how to submit that pull request and add that to the docs, I think that's the easiest and most straightforward way to contribute to Meteor because nothing can possibly break if you update the docs. Mm-hmm. So I think step one is putting that contributing guideline somewhere that people can contribute to that.
Yes.
And then maybe somebody who's really passionate can add some list of things like, make sure you write tests. Here's how you write tests, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Or like, it could just be iterative, like reasons why you guys look at a PR. Like, because you said you're going to be chipping away at PRs, right?
Yeah.
PR and you're like, oh, I'm not going to spend any more time on this one because of X, or I'm not going to spend any more time on this one because of X. And then whatever that reason is, like, could be thrown into the contributing guide right away. And iteratively, that contributing guide is going to grow.
Yeah, I really like this thing that Swift is doing. Swift has a list of language features that people have proposed but were denied, which is a very valuable list because it's stuff like, like other languages have this thing. Why can't Swift have it? Right. And then they have good and like well thought out explanations for why not. And so I think that's another thing we could have is, like you're saying, like either common features or common things that we can't accept into Meteor, and then like a good reason why, so that we can avoid basically anything that lets us focus on the good stuff, and spend our time where it's most impactful is what we should do.
Exactly. Yeah. But have that feedback back to the community, because right now, like no voice is like pretty offensive, I think, to the community. And I think like PR is hanging out there. That's the issue there, which is unintentional. That's not what you guys are aiming for at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is good stuff to hear. Can I suggest that you guys just like remove all pages from the wiki? Remove everything like Meteor guides. Like there's
that's actually what I was going to do. So the reason the Meteor guide exists, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is there's like 17,000 different places to find a guide about how to do stuff with Meteor. Like on the wiki, there's this useful page. It's like how to publish your app to the App Store. Like that better be in the guide soon. Yeah, the wiki it's rough, man.
It is like there's redirections. There's stuff that's like out of date, and you do a search and you find an issue, and one of the team at MDG says, "Oh yeah, that wiki's out of date."
Yeah,
and like he posted that response like 2 months ago, say, and like you were just at that wiki. You're like, "Oh my gosh, he knew that wiki was out of date 2 months ago. It's still out of date."
Well, the thing that's hard is like it's hard to even find out where all the stuff is. Like I think we just need to be disciplined and say like if there's some documentation, it goes in the guide or it goes like in the docs, it doesn't go anywhere else. Because if somebody's posting like hack pads that have like crucial documentation or like a README that's like buried very, very deep somewhere, even I don't know where that stuff is, and like people in the community certainly don't.
Yeah, it's definitely like challenging. Like there's a lot of stuff out there. This is a really big project, and I guess like to reiterate you and like to calm the nerves of the community. Like you guys recognize that the monolithic structure, like it's here. That's what it is right now. But you guys want to move away from that.
Yep.
Now, that's almost like the limiting factor on why we're having most of the issue with like accepting PRs. And so until that's like completely taken care of and everything's kind of broken up into separate packages, there's always going to be like this like tug of war of where you guys wish you could be with PRs, but there's also like this reality where it's like just too difficult.
Yeah, and I think this is where these conversations are coming in that we're going to have very soon about, how do we do something about this now and start moving in the right direction?
Yeah. Yeah. And that would be like almost necessarily needs to come from you guys. Like, cause this is like architectural conversation on how to like structure Meteor as a whole in these like separate areas.
Yeah. And I think like, people talking about something like a Meteor Foundation. I think that we need to hit some sort of middle ground. Because I think one thing people, or at least some people appreciate about Meteor is that it has like a consistent vision and direction. And I think it's important to maintain that. Like, I know some open source projects out there have some like, they have 2 or 3 like super big corporations that are like pulling on each other, trying to go in different directions.
Yeah.
And I think it's super valuable to have some sort of consistent vision. On the other hand, I think like that needs to be like strongly informed and influenced by people in the community in a way that's like very legit and that we can't ignore.
Yeah. And once you guys like break this up into like separate repos, then would you guys be open to like making some of the like the awesome community people like owners of some of the repos?
I would love to have that happen. I would love to have, perhaps Aaron Oda, one of the owners of some of the client-side GraphQL stuff, for example.
He's going to have to fire up some more instances of the Aeronoda robot to do that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of now there's some pretty big companies using Meteor, big by our standards, and some of those people might have some employees who are interested in contributing to stuff.
Absolutely. This is a huge thing, and just saying that is like it really validates something. One thing that always like kind of stood out to me, which I didn't like hearing, was not so much that you guys are doing something bad by doing this, but it just like rubbed me wrong whenever we talked about PRs or things growing or new features of Meteor, and the community want to get involved and like we push and like get a response from you guys. The response back would always be like, yes, we need to do better. We, as a referring it to as MDG, like MDG needs to do better here, or we need to be faster here, or we need to do it great there. And that always kind of rubbed me wrong because it's like, oh, this is like an open source project where it's like us. It's like, it's not just like MDG and I think it's unfair to have like the burden all on you guys.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I want to point to as kind of a first step towards that, is again, every time I'm talking about it, the Meteor guide. That was our attempt, myself and Tom Coleman, at having the most open development process we can imagine. We posted the stuff as soon as we had any outlines. We had every pull request that was public. We had all of our meeting notes public. We tagged all of the community members we could think of on every topic when we were discussing it. And at the end of the day, we couldn't accept everyone's opinion. There were some people where
there were some massive opinions. I couldn't believe the feedback that you guys got.
Yeah. At some point we had to pick between, for example, astronomy and simple schema, and there was just no way around it because our goal was to just pick one thing. But on the other hand, if you want to make a significant contribution to the guide, I would love to work with you on that.
Yeah.
Because that's the one place where, Tom and I, we have total autonomy. There's no way contributing to the guide will break any part of Meteor. It doesn't need any tests. And that's the place where we want to put our money where our mouth is and say, if you have a valuable contribution to the guide, we would love to see it.
That's a good first step.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the first project where we've been able to take that super decoupled approach. And unfortunately, it's not a code project, it's a documentation project. So it's not as, hampered by these concerns that I'm talking about.
Right.
But I hope that the data project can be the next place where we can really put our money where our mouth is on these things that we're saying. Yes.
And you guys should listen to part 1 of show 2 with what he means by that, because it's awesome, the plan that the data team has. I really, in 1 year, I really want to, it feels very much like MDG owns Meteor right now, and it's an open source project. In 1 year, I really want to reverse that feeling and say, Meteor really feels like the community owns it. Like they're the owners of it. Would you say you guys share that same feeling? Like Galaxy is going to be owned by MDG. That's your guys' stuff. But when it comes to an open source thing, it's almost like if we elect Donald Trump as president and he does all this stuff, but yet a lot of people are involved in the government. 4 years later, Donald Trump's going to be like, look what I did. Look what I did. Right. Or another candidate might say, this is for the people, and in 4 years, accomplish a bunch of stuff. They're going to be like, look what we did. Look what we did. That's kind of, I don't know if you're kind of getting what I'm.
Yeah. So I think, the important thing is to have Meteor be driven by the right people. Yes. So I think that the number one pit that I don't want to fall into is I don't want to have a Meteor which is driven by the people who write the longest blog posts or submit the most pull requests or post the most messages on the forum. It needs to be the people who are invested in Meteor in a very significant way that their success is inextricable from the success of the framework. Right? if there's a multi-million dollar company that is completely invested in Meteor and their success is completely tied to it, then those are the kinds of people I would be comfortable having the keys to the thing. Because I think like what we can't have is we can't have people who are excited about technology for technology's sake, right? Who are like, I want to try out this new functional programming thing, and I think Meteor Core is a great way to try it out. It's not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who has a real business need, whose job depends on it, who knows that if Meteor is not successful in 2 years, like they're going to have a really tough time.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have a package system where people can go out and do this exploration. And the more that we break up the monolithic Meteor into different NPM packages, and you said in part 1 of the show that like in the future, people are going to be able to take parts of Meteor out and replace it how they want. Like people could do those experiments and those cutting edge stuff.
Yeah. And I
don't think that's what I'm getting at when I'm saying, but I do understand the concern of what you're saying. But what I'm saying is, people love Meteor. People love your guys' vision, MDG's vision. That's what we love, and I think that's what you're saying. Like you guys need, you guys still would want like a good group of people facilitating or guiding it. I think that's what we want from you guys. But I think ultimately, like it comes down to like ownership and the feeling of ownership.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah, I think one way to frame what you're talking about is, I think until now, when we look at feature requests for Meteor, we've looked at it as like, is this aligned with our current vision for Meteor and what we think people need? I think we need to reframe that discussion into like accepting pull requests and features from the community has its own merit, right? Like letting people shape the framework in the direction that they want it to go and the direction that works for them is its own goal, in addition to following a more long-term vision.
Yes. And like facilitate conversations around the topic of direction.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right.
And I think you guys have been starting to do that. Sorry for interrupting again.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, but I think the number one most important thing, like I said before, is going to be, taking people who are invested in a particular module or a particular part of the stack and getting those people to be owners of those things.
Yes.
So that, each individual part can have its own life.
Yes.
Right? Like Blaze can strike out and be a thing that people can use outside of Meteor and can have its own goals outside of just what the people in the building think it should be doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's exciting. It's challenging because now we have all this technical debt in the old Meteor. But guys, this is huge. This is huge. What Sashko's saying, like he's really like laying down some truth, some direction for the future. So, dude.
Yeah, but again, like I said, it's just my opinion. I mean, we'll have to see where it goes.
Yeah. Hey, man, that's a good opinion. Let me review my notes really quick. See if I had anything else out here. You answered it all, man. Is there anything that now that you got like this platform right now to talk about PRs and like a larger community and what people might be thinking or what you've heard from people following this? Is there anything more you want to say or?
I guess one thing is if you have a pull request that's related to data stuff like tracker or DDP or accounts, that I'm on the hook for that now. So if you feel like that's not being addressed, feel free to reach out to me directly. Very
cool. One last question now because of that. You're going to be like having these separate, it's not going to be a monolithic code base for this new data layer that you guys have that you talked about. Do you think that this is a good opportunity to once you get like a good base in there to then open it up to to other people that seem to have been part of the community, a really good contributor, and be like, hey, like, you're going to be owner
Of some of the new data stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we would love to have that happen. One thing I've been working on is a map of the different components. There's probably going to be somewhere between like 10 and 20 different parts.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, you can use them all together as one piece, but at the end of the day, technically they're going to be separated. And I think like having different people own and drive the different parts is going to be pretty crucial, right? Like we're going to need flow router integration. We're going to need an Angular integration. We're going to need Blaze and React, and we're going to need something about different data sources. And, as long as all those things work with the same system, there's no reason at all that, this can all be built by different people. I think those would be a great place to contribute, where it's very clear what feature set you need, and then there's still some flexibility to make your thing better than all the other things.
Awesome. So to wrap this up, if you guys want to be part of this new world of contributing to this new state of mind with Meteor, start off with the guide. We need help making contribute guidelines, moving that into GitHub repo rather than the wiki. And as Sashko is releasing stuff for this new data layer, like, get your ass on board and really contribute. And
yeah, call me out. Yeah,
you might become one of the owners of one of these future repos. So keep an eye out. Like he's looking for some owners now. He's looking for some partners. So partner up with him, guys. Dude,
let's do it.
This was a tough conversation.
Oh God, yeah.
Hats off to you, Sashko. I mean, again, this is another reason why I'm stoked for Meteor in 2016. I think all your answers were exactly what we wanted to hear. And
well, I hope that's not because I said it because it's what you wanted to hear, right? I think these are the things that I actually believe. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you framed it in a way where also basically what I meant by that is you frame it in a way and like you're saying like, hey, this is why it's difficult right now, and this is where we want to be, so like that difficultness is removed in the future. How can people argue with that? So that's exciting because it's recognition. It's saying, yo, we're going to be changing, and hey, you guys are part of that change. It's exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited.
That is exciting.
Yeah, we still have like 11 months in 2016, so let's do it.
Right on. All right, guys, this is the end of part 2. This was a hot topic, and we are going into about 40 minutes on this show.
Oh, boy.
Sorry. But I think you all are going to really enjoy this. Until next time, stay in tune, build some awesome stuff with Meteor. Adios.